My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old, and for almost a decade, I've been teaching chemistry at a public high school in Portland. It's not a glamorous job. I don't make much money. I don't drive anything impressive. I don't talk about passive income or career ladders. But until recently, I believe my life made sense. It was quiet, purposeful, grounded. 8 months ago, everything I thought I understood about love, loyalty, and people fell apart in a hospital hallway. My mother was dying in the room behind me. She'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. No long buildup, no gentle warning. 1 month she was complaining about back pain and exhaustion. The next, we were sitting across from an oncologist who spoke softly but didn't sugarcoat anything. Maybe a year, probably less. My father left when I was 6. No dramatic fight, no goodbye speech. He just didn't come home one day. After that, it was always just me and my mom. She worked long hours, took whatever shifts she could get, never complained, never let me see how scared or tired she was. By the time I hit middle school, I wasn't just her daughter. I was her constant, her backup, her grown-up in the house, even though I was still a kid. So when she got sick, there wasn't a decision to make. I took family leave from school, packed up my apartment, moved back into the small house I grew up in. I learned how to read medication schedules, manage side effects, track symptoms, and advocate for her with doctors. I cooked soft meals she could keep down. I slept in a chair next to her bed on nights when the pain meds wore off too early and she was afraid to close her eyes. My boyfriend at the time, Ethan Miller, told me he understood. We'd been together 3.5 years. He worked in corporate sales, made good money, liked nice things, nice restaurants, nice vacations, nice plans that stretched neatly into the future. "I'm here," he said when we got the diagnosis. "Whatever you need, Em." For the first couple of months, it seemed true. He came by after work sometimes, brought takeout, sat with my mom and made polite conversation, told her stories about his job. She liked him. She told me once that she thought he was steady, and that mattered to me more than I admitted. But around the 3rd month, something shifted. The visits got shorter, less frequent. The texts went from paragraphs to one-liners. Phone calls turned into quick check-ins instead of conversations. When I asked if something was wrong, he blamed work, deadlines, pressure, travel. I believed him because it was easier than questioning it, and because I didn't have the energy to analyze our relationship when all my focus was on keeping my mom comfortable. Last Tuesday night, I was at the hospital. My mom had taken a bad turn. Fever, nausea. She couldn't keep fluids down. They admitted her for observation. I'd been there since early morning, sitting in the same vinyl chair, listening to the steady beep of monitors, trying not to replay the words the doctor had used earlier that day. Comfort care. Around 11 p.m., I stepped into the hallway to get coffee from the vending machine, the kind that tastes burnt but keeps you awake. That's when I saw Ethan. He was standing near the nurse's station like he'd been waiting. His hair was neatly styled, his shirt crisp. He didn't look worried. He didn't look rushed. He looked prepared. Like this wasn't an impulse visit. "Hey," he said. He didn't quite meet my eyes. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice sounded flat, even to me. I was too tired to fake concern. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped instantly. That familiar sick feeling when your body understands something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. "Now?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He nodded. "I've been trying to find the right time. There just never is one." I gestured toward my mom's room. Through the glass, I could see her sleeping. Thin, pale, machines doing work her body no longer could. "She's right there," I said. "This really can't wait?" He took a breath, like someone bracing for cold water. "I can't do this anymore, Emily," he said. "I can't put my life on hold, waiting for it to be over." For a second, the words didn't register. Then they did. Waiting for it to be over. He was talking about my mom, about her dying, like it was an inconvenience, like a delayed project. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed quietly at something a coworker said. The hospital kept functioning like nothing world-ending had just happened. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cruel in his tone. That somehow made it worse. He sounded calm, rational, like he was explaining why he was leaving a job that no longer fit his long-term goals. "She's not getting better," he continued, "and everything revolves around this. The hospital, your mom. I don't feel like I exist anymore." I searched his face for something. Hesitation, guilt, doubt. There was nothing. I wanted to yell, to tell him how unfair that was, how I didn't choose this, how she was a person, not an obstacle in his timeline. Instead, something inside me shut down. Okay, I said. He frowned slightly. Okay? Okay, I repeated. What do you want me to say? You came to a hospital to break up with me while my mom is dying. I don't think there's anything left to discuss. He opened his mouth like he wanted to add something. An explanation, an apology, a justification that wouldn't have mattered anyway. I didn't wait. I turned around and walked back into my mom's room, sat down beside her bed, took her hand. It felt warm, fragile. I pulled out my phone, deleted Ethan's number, blocked him on everything. Social media, messaging apps, email, all of it. My mom slept through the entire thing. She had no idea that the man I thought I'd build a life with had just walked away in the hallway outside her room. That was 4 days ago. I'm writing this at 2 a.m. from her house because I can't sleep. The hospice nurse says it could be any day now. Hours, maybe. Ethan hasn't tried to contact me. Not once. No text. No call from a friend's phone. Nothing. I keep thinking I should feel something. Anger. Sadness. Betrayal. But I don't. I feel numb. Maybe I'm in shock. Maybe I've spent all my emotions watching my mom fade away. Either way, one thing is painfully clear. The man I loved couldn't even pretend to care that my mother is dying. And that tells me everything I need to know. 4 days after that night in the hospital hallway, my mom died. It was early morning. The sky outside her bedroom window was still dark, that strange blue-gray color that only exists before sunrise. I was sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, counting her breaths without realizing I was doing it. The hospice nurse had stepped out to give us privacy. She knew. They always know. My mom squeezed my hand once. Just once. Weak but intentional. Hey, I whispered. I'm here. Her breathing slowed, shallow, uneven. Then it stopped. No dramatic moment, no final speech, just quiet. The clock on my phone read 6:47 a.m. I stayed there for a long time after, long enough that the nurse came back in and gently asked if I was ready. I nodded, even though I didn't feel ready for anything. I don't remember crying right away. I remember feeling hollow, like my body was still there, but something essential had been removed. The days that followed blurred together. Phone calls, paperwork, decisions I didn't feel qualified to make, what dress she should be buried in, which photo to use for the obituary, whether she would have preferred lilies or roses. I kept thinking, I should know this. She's my mom. But grief does something to your memory. It scrambles things you thought were permanent. The funeral was that Friday. It was small. My mom didn't have much family left. A few cousins flew in, some old friends from her teaching days, a handful of my coworkers from school, people who knew her as kind, patient, quietly stubborn. The woman who stayed late to help struggling students. The one who always brought extra snacks, just in case. I stood at the front of the room and thanked everyone for coming. I don't remember most of what I said. I remember looking out at the faces and feeling oddly disconnected, like I was watching myself from somewhere else. And I remember waiting, not consciously, not in a hopeful way, but there was a small, stupid part of me that kept expecting Ethan to walk through the doors. Not because I wanted him there, not because I thought he deserved to be, but because it felt like basic human decency. We were together for 3.5 years. He knew my mom. He'd eaten dinner at that table. She'd taught him how to make her lasagna because he'd once said it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. They'd gone shopping together once when I was grading papers and didn't feel like going out. And still, nothing. No text, no call, no flowers, no message through a mutual friend. He didn't show up. He didn't acknowledge that she existed. That hurt more than the breakup. My best friend, Jason, was the one who held me together through all of it. He filtered my phone calls, made sure I ate, reminded me to drink water. When people said things like, she's in a better place, and I couldn't handle it, he stepped in and changed the subject. Don't think about anything else right now, he kept saying. Just get through this, 1 hour at a time. After the service, when most people had left, a man I barely recognized pulled me aside. Gray suit, calm voice. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. I'm Michael Reynolds, your mother's attorney. When you're ready, we should schedule a meeting to go over her estate. I nodded automatically. Estate sounded like a big word for what I assumed would be a modest house and a savings account that barely covered expenses. My mom had been a teacher her whole life. She lived carefully, conservatively. I wasn't expecting much, and honestly, I didn't care. You can't put a price on the person who raised you alone. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. I walked into Michael's office expecting paperwork, signatures, maybe a discussion about selling the house eventually. What I didn't expect was to feel like I'd accidentally stepped into someone else's life. Michael slid a folder across the table, then another, and another. He started listing numbers, accounts, investments, percentages. I stopped him halfway through. "I think you have the wrong person," I said. "My mom was a public school teacher." He smiled gently and turned the folder toward me so I could see the documents. My name, her name, everything legitimate. 2.8 million across various accounts and investments. A 28% equity stake in a tech company called Tech Vista Solutions. A seat on the board. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain didn't know what else to do. "That's not possible," I said. Michael didn't look surprised. "Your uncle, James Carter, founded Tech Vista in the late 90s. You knew he did well." I did. I just didn't know how well. When James died in 2019, he left everything to my mom. She never touched most of it, never said a word, kept teaching, kept driving the same old car, kept living in the same house. "She told me she wanted you to build your own life," Michael said. "She planned to tell you when you had a family of your own." Cancer had other plans. I sat there for nearly 2 hours, staring at documents, trying to reconcile the woman I knew with the reality in front of me. Jason picked me up because I couldn't drive. We went to his place. He ordered pizza. I drank more than I should have and tried to process the fact that my entire understanding of my life had just shifted. 3 days later, Jason was scrolling through Instagram when he suddenly went quiet. "Don't look," he said, which of course meant I did. It was a post from Madison, one of our mutual friends. Tagged location, Le Pigeon, a restaurant I could never afford on a teacher's salary. The photo showed Ethan sitting at a table, dressed up, wine glass in hand. Next to him was a woman I didn't recognize. Everyone looked polished, comfortable, like they belonged there. The caption read, "When my friend finds his upgrade." I felt something settle in my chest then. Not anger. Clarity. I handed the phone back to Jason. "Block her," I said. "Block anyone connected to him." And for the first time since my mom got sick, I slept through the night. For a while after that night, I didn't think about Ethan at all. That surprised me. I'd expected the grief to stack. My mom, then the breakup, then everything else collapsing on top of each other until I couldn't breathe. But grief doesn't work like that. It doesn't line itself up neatly. It floods everything at once, and when it does, there isn't much room left for anything smaller. What did keep pulling at me was the paperwork. Folders stacked on my kitchen table. Bank statements, legal documents, words like assets, equity, beneficiary. Every time I opened one, it felt like I was intruding on a life I wasn't meant to have, like I'd accidentally been handed someone else's story. My mom had lived like someone who didn't have anything extra. She reused aluminum foil. She kept a handwritten grocery list taped to the fridge. She lectured me about wasting electricity if I left a lamp on in an empty room. According to the documents now sitting in front of me, she'd been quietly wealthy for years. I kept replaying old memories, scanning them for clues. The way she never panicked about money, even when I did. How she encouraged me to take the teaching job instead of chasing something more lucrative. "You need work you can live with," she'd said. I always thought she meant morally. I didn't realize she might have meant financially, too. Michael Reynolds called a few days later to go over next steps. "There's no rush," he said, "but eventually we'll need to address your role with Tech Vista. The board will want to formally welcome you." That sentence still didn't feel real. "I don't know anything about running a tech company," I said. "You're not expected to," Michael replied. "Your uncle didn't want that. He wanted oversight, someone who wouldn't treat the company like a personal jackpot." That sounded exactly like my mom. Jason came over that night with takeout and a six-pack he ended up drinking alone. He sat on the floor, leaning against the couch, flipping through one of the folders like it might bite him. "This is insane," he said. "Do you understand how not normal this is?" "I feel like I stole someone else's life," I said. He shook his head. "No, you inherited it. There's a difference." A few days later, Jason was scrolling on his phone again. This time he didn't warn me. He just went quiet. "Emily," he said slowly, "you should probably see this." I took the phone from his hand. It was LinkedIn. The woman sitting next to Ethan in that Instagram photo, the one I hadn't paid much attention to, had a full profile. Name, job title, company. Senior Director of Sales, Tech Vista Solutions. I stared at the screen, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. "That can't be real," I said. Jason nodded. "It is." A short, disbelieving laugh escaped me, not because it was funny, because my brain didn't know how else to react. Out of everyone in Portland, out of every possible scenario, the woman Ethan had moved on with worked for the company I had just inherited a significant stake in. I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. This isn't a movie, I said. This kind of coincidence doesn't happen. Jason looked at me. Apparently it does. I called Michael the next morning. Yes, he said calmly after I explained. She's part of senior sales leadership, reports directly to the CEO. Does she know who I am? I asked. Not yet, he said, but eventually she will. After that conversation, something shifted. This wasn't random. It wasn't poetic fate. It was timing. Sharp, uncomfortable timing that didn't care how I felt about it. I still didn't know her name. I didn't look it up. To me, she wasn't a person yet. She was a symbol. Proof that Ethan hadn't left because things were hard. He left because he had somewhere else to go. Someone shinier, easier, more aligned with the life he wanted. That realization hurt less than I expected, because it came with clarity. Ethan hadn't walked away because he was overwhelmed. He walked away because staying would have required sacrifice. That night, I tightened every privacy setting on my phone, not out of spite, but because I finally understood something my mom had always known. People show you who they are when it costs them something to stay. And Ethan had already shown me. For the first time since the hospital hallway, I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. I learned her name 3 days later. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't scrolling, digging, or trying to torture myself. It showed up the way these things always do. Uninvited, casual, disguised as coincidence. Jason sent me a screenshot while I was folding laundry. No message, just the image. I stared at it for a few seconds before my brain processed what I was seeing. It was another Instagram post. Different angle. Same restaurant. Same table. Ethan, relaxed this time, arm draped casually over the back of a chair that wasn't empty anymore. She was leaning into him. The woman from the first photo. This time she was tagged. Vanessa Hart. I didn't react right away. I noticed details instead. The polished hair. The tailored blazer. The watch on her wrist that probably cost more than my monthly rent used to. The ease in her posture, like she belonged in rooms like that. The caption was different this time. Shorter. Cleaner. Celebrating big wins. No hearts, no declarations, just confidence. Jason called a minute later. You okay? He asked. I think so, I said. And for once I wasn't lying. I clicked on her profile. Vanessa Hart, Senior Director of Sales, Tech Vista Solutions. Her page was a highlight reel. Conferences, networking events, team dinners, photos taken in glass-walled offices and rooftop bars. Everything about her screamed momentum. Forward motion. A life that didn't pause for hospitals or chemo schedules or dying parents. I understood then. This wasn't a rebound. This wasn't something that happened after Ethan left me. This had been waiting. Maybe not emotionally, maybe not officially, but it had been there. Close enough to step into the moment staying became inconvenient. That night in the hospital hallway suddenly made sense in a way that made my stomach twist. Ethan hadn't come there conflicted. He'd come there resolved. I closed the app and put my phone face down on the table. Jason didn't say anything for a moment. Then, carefully, "Do you want me to say something to Madison?" "No," I said immediately. "Don't." He exhaled. "Good, because that would get messy." "I don't want messy," I said. "I want quiet." And I meant it. The next week was a strange one. Messages started trickling in, not from Ethan, but from people who suddenly felt comfortable bringing him up. Casual comments disguised as concern. "Have you heard from him? I saw he's doing really well. She seems impressive." I didn't respond to any of it. What I did get, though, were notifications. Blocked numbers trying to call. Emails filtered straight into folders I didn't check. The attempts were subtle at first, then more frequent. Ethan never said my name in any of the messages I later saw through previews. It was always vague. "Can we talk? I just want to explain. You deserve to hear my side." I didn't. Around that same time, Michael emailed me about the upcoming Tech Vista board meeting. My first one. "It'll be over Zoom," he wrote. "You're welcome to keep your camera off if you prefer. No pressure to speak unless you want to." I stared at the calendar invite longer than necessary. Vanessa would be there. She had to be. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel excited. What I felt was curious, detached, like I was observing a story that no longer belonged to me. The day of the meeting, I logged in early and muted myself. Camera off. Name visible. Emily Carter. Participants started filling in. Faces popping up one by one. Executives. Department heads. And then, Vanessa. She looked exactly like her photos. composed, focused, confident. She didn't glance at the participant list right away. When she did, her eyes flicked past my name without hesitation. She didn't know yet. The CEO, Philip Torres, welcomed everyone and offered his condolences for my loss. His tone was sincere, professional, respectful. Then the meeting moved on. Sales projections, expansion plans, a discussion about potential restructuring. Vanessa spoke clearly, confidently, presenting numbers with the kind of ease that comes from knowing you belong in the room. I listened. I asked a few questions. Neutral ones. Strategic ones. I never said her name. I didn't need to. Halfway through the meeting, I noticed something change. Vanessa's delivery faltered for half a second. She glanced again at the participant list. This time her eyes stopped. Just for a moment. Then she kept going. After the call ended, I closed my laptop and sat there for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't plotting. I wasn't even hurt. What I felt was clarity so sharp it almost stung. Vanessa wasn't the problem. Ethan wasn't confused. Nothing about this was accidental. He didn't leave because I was unavailable. He left because he'd already upgraded. And somehow, knowing that made it easier to breathe. The messages didn't start right away. At first, there was nothing. Just quiet. The kind that settles after something ends and doesn't immediately announce what comes next. I went back to packing up my mom's house, sorting through decades of paperwork, photos, clothes she'd kept even when they didn't fit anymore. Grief work, slow, heavy, grounding. Then, about 2 weeks later, the silence cracked. My phone lit up with a notification I hadn't seen in months. Block number attempted to call. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I was tempted to answer, but because it confirmed something I already suspected. Ethan knew. I didn't know how he found out at first. Maybe the lawyer's office. Maybe the board. Maybe gossip traveled faster than I realized once money entered the picture. But however it happened, the timing wasn't subtle. The next day, another attempt. Then another. By the end of the week, the texts started slipping through before the filters caught them. Emily, I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to end the way they did. Can we please talk? I owe you that. I read every single one. I didn't respond to a single one. Jason noticed before I said anything. He's trying, isn't he? He asked one night while we were eating takeout on the floor of my half-packed living room. I nodded. Yeah. You okay? I think so, I said. And again, I meant it. The thing that surprised me most was how little satisfaction I felt. There was no rush of power, no sense of, now he gets it. Just a quiet confirmation that my instincts had been right all along. People don't come back because they suddenly grow a conscience. They come back because something changes. A week later, Jason's girlfriend, Maya, mentioned something over drinks. I don't know if this matters, she said carefully, but I heard Vanessa asked about you at work. I looked up. Asked what? Who you were, what your role was, why your name was on the board. That made sense. Vanessa wasn't stupid. She worked in sales. She understood hierarchy, influence, power dynamics. She would have connected the dots the moment she realized who I was. Did she say anything else? I asked. Maya shook her head. Just that it was unexpected. That word followed me home. Unexpected. As if my life had been some anomaly that needed explaining. The next Tech Vista board meeting was more tense than the first. Layoffs were on the table. 10% across sales and operations. Vanessa presented projections again, her tone steady, but there was something different underneath it this time. A tightness. A hesitation she hadn't had before. I asked questions. Thoughtful ones. Fair ones. I suggested postponing the decision until the next quarter, citing incomplete revenue data. Philip agreed. Meeting adjourned. I never acknowledged Vanessa directly, never referenced her department by name, never let my eyes linger on her screen. That, I learned, was far more unsettling than confrontation. After that meeting, the messages from Ethan intensified. Please, Emily, I know I messed up. I was under so much pressure. I still care about you. I let them sit unread sometimes. Other times, I opened them immediately. Still no response. 2 weeks later, he showed up. Not at my apartment. He didn't know where I lived anymore. He went to my mom's house. Jason texted me while I was at work. He's sitting in his car outside. Has been there for 20 minutes. I stared at the message, then typed back. Don't engage. Jason sent a thumbs up emoji. When I drove past later that evening, Ethan was gone. No note, no confrontation, just absence. That night, something shifted inside me. For months, I'd felt like everything in my life had been decided for me. The cancer, the loss, the breakup, the inheritance. events stacking up without my consent. But this was different. I was choosing silence. Not because I was scared to speak, but because I had nothing left to say. Silence wasn't weakness. It wasn't avoidance. It was clarity. It was boundaries. It was understanding that not every ending requires an explanation, especially when the explanation had already been delivered in a hospital hallway. I blocked the new number. I didn't look back. And for the first time since my mom died, I felt something close to control. The first thing I noticed when the messages stopped was how quiet my phone felt. No more blocked call notifications. No half-previewed texts slipping through filters. No late-night emails pretending to be about closure, but really about regret. Just silence. Real silence. It lasted 4 days. Then Jason called me. "You're not going to like this," he said. "I haven't liked much lately," I replied. He hesitated. "Vanessa knows. Like, really knows." That got my attention. "Knows what?" I asked. "Who you are," he said. "What you own. And that Ethan didn't exactly tell the truth about how things ended between you two." I closed my eyes. Jason explained that once the story reached Tech Vista, board chatter, quiet conversations, things said too casually, Vanessa started asking questions. Not emotional ones, strategic ones, about timing, about overlap, about why Ethan had framed the breakup the way he did. "She didn't blow up," Jason said. "She did the opposite. She pulled back." That part didn't surprise me. Vanessa worked in sales. She understood patterns. When something didn't add up, she didn't react. She recalculated. The next board meeting confirmed it. Vanessa logged in on time, hair perfect, blazer pressed, but there was a noticeable distance in the way she spoke. More formal, less warmth. She delivered her numbers cleanly and efficiently, then went quiet. Sales pressure was mounting. Layoffs were back on the table. Philip didn't delay the decision this time. 10% across sales and operations, he said, effective next month. Vanessa nodded once. Professional, controlled. I watched. I listened. I said nothing. After the meeting ended, Philip stayed on the call. "Emily," he said, "thank you again for your discretion. Your uncle would have appreciated the way you handled this." That night, Maya filled in the rest. "Vanessa's fine," she told Jason, who told me later, "but Ethan's spiraling." Apparently, once Vanessa pulled back, Ethan leaned in harder. He started asking questions, too many of them, about board dynamics, about whether her job was safe, about whether you had any influence over her future. He checked her phone, pressed for reassurance, needed constant validation. The irony was almost painful. The same man who told me he couldn't put his life on hold while my mother was dying was now panicking because his new life felt unstable. A week later, something unexpected happened. An old colleague from my teaching days reached out. He ran an education software company, looking for a new platform partner. We talked. I made an introduction. One call led to another. 2 weeks later, Tech Vista signed an $8 million contract. Philip called me personally. "You just secured the sales division's future," he said. Vanessa's department was safe. Her job was safe, because of me. I didn't do it for her. I didn't do it for Ethan. I did it because it was the right decision for the company my uncle built and my mother protected. Vanessa was promoted a week later, vice president of sales. Bigger title, bigger responsibility. According to Maya, the promotion widened the gap. Vanessa grew more distant, more focused, less interested in emotional reassurance. Ethan, meanwhile, unraveled. He complained that she was checked out, that she was always distracted, that she wasn't present anymore. Jason repeated the words back to me later. They were the exact same ones Ethan had used on me in that hospital hallway. Karma didn't knock. It reflected. By the end of the month, the messages from Ethan stopped completely. No apology, no explanation, just absence. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. I hadn't won. I hadn't lost. I had simply stepped out of the cycle. And the cycle collapsed on its own. The messages started again in week 7. Different tone this time, different rhythm, less confidence, more urgency. I recognized it immediately. Ethan wasn't trying to explain anymore. He was trying to reconnect. "Emily, please, I know I hurt you. I wasn't myself back then. I didn't handle things right." I read them all, sometimes right away, sometimes hours later, sometimes the next day. I never replied. Jason noticed the pattern before I mentioned it. "He's unraveling," he said one evening while we were eating leftovers in my half-empty apartment. "This isn't about closure anymore. This is panic." I nodded. "Vanessa's done with him." "Yeah," Jason said, "she is." From what Maya heard through work, the distance had become permanent. Vanessa stopped inviting Ethan to events, stopped looping him into her schedule, stopped making space, Not dramatically, not cruelly, just efficiently. She didn't confront. She recalculated. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't let go. He sent longer messages now, paragraphs, late-night texts that read like half-finished confessions. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. You were always there for me. I should have been there for you. That line almost made me laugh. Should have. Past tense, convenient tense. The irony was sharp enough to taste. He wanted to talk now that Vanessa had pulled away. Now that his upgrade had stopped cushioning his fall. Now that the certainty he'd traded me for had turned conditional. One afternoon, I got a notification that surprised me. A voicemail transcript. I hadn't listened to one of those in months. Emily, it's me. I know you probably won't answer, but I just need you to know. I get it now. I really do. I was selfish. I was scared. I didn't know how to be there for you when things got hard, and I hate myself for that. Please, just 5 minutes. I need to say this to you. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was tempted, but because I realized something important. This wasn't accountability. This was desperation dressed up as insight. If Vanessa hadn't pulled away, that message would have never been sent. If his life hadn't destabilized, my pain would have remained acceptable collateral. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the audio. 2 days later, he tried again, this time through Jason. Jason answered because he didn't recognize the number. Tell her I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ethan said, voice tight. I just need her to know that I understand now. I was wrong. Jason didn't hesitate. You understood when you said it, he replied. You just didn't care. There was a pause. Then Ethan spoke again. She's changed, he said. Vanessa, she's cold now, distant, always working, always distracted. Jason almost laughed when he told me that part. He actually said she's not present, Jason said. I swear, I almost dropped the phone. I felt something then. Not satisfaction. Recognition. Those were the exact words Ethan had used on me while my mother was dying. The exact accusation. The exact framing. History didn't repeat itself. It exposed itself. That night, I went through my phone and did something I hadn't done yet. I blocked his email. Not out of anger. Out of finality. The next day, Maya confirmed what I already knew. It's over, she said. Vanessa ended it. Clean break, no drama. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Ethan tried one last time. A handwritten letter showed up at my apartment. 5 pages. Careful handwriting. Memories. Apologies. Promises of growth. I read the first paragraph. Then I folded it back up and threw it away. I didn't need to finish it to understand the truth. Ethan wasn't sorry he left. He was sorry he left too early. Sorry he miscalculated. Sorry the upgrade didn't hold. Sorry the safety net he'd assumed would still be there had quietly disappeared. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, something finally settled. I didn't need closure. I already had it. It came the moment he walked away in that hospital hallway and showed me exactly who he was when staying became difficult. Everything after that was just noise. And for the first time since all of this began, the noise stopped mattering. By week 9, the messages stopped. Not gradually, not with a final plea or dramatic sign-off. They just ended. One day my phone was lighting up with attempts that went nowhere, and the next, there was nothing. Jason thought Ethan had finally given up. Maya thought Vanessa had made it clear there was no room left for excuses. I didn't know which one was right. I only knew that the quiet felt different this time, heavier, more permanent. I was back at my mom's house most days, packing what was left. I'd already decided to sell it. I loved the place, but every room held too much of her, too many echoes, too many moments where I'd turn, half expecting to hear her voice. While sorting through a drawer in the kitchen, I found an envelope with my name on it. Not a legal document. Just handwriting I recognized instantly. Inside was a short note she must have written months before she died. Emily, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say everything. I hope you know how proud I am of you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are when things are hard. That matters more than anything. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried for the first time in weeks. Not because of Ethan, because I finally understood what my mom had been trying to teach me my whole life. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't chase people who leave. A few days later, my therapist said something that stuck with me. Silence can be a boundary, she said. Not a punishment. A decision. That reframed everything. I hadn't ignored Ethan to hurt him. I hadn't stayed quiet to feel powerful. I'd stayed quiet because engaging would have meant reopening something that was already closed. And then, on a Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost blocked it automatically, but something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. maybe instinct. I opened the message. Emily, this is Vanessa. I stared at the screen longer than I care to admit. The message continued. I debated reaching out. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for how things started, for what I didn't know, and for the timing of everything. I didn't understand the full story at first. I do now. I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel angry. If anything, I felt detached. She hadn't written to compete or to justify herself. There was no apology by proxy, no blame shifting, just acknowledgement. A few minutes later, another message came through. I ended things with Ethan. That decision had nothing to do with you or the company. I need people in my life who are present and honest. I thought you should know, so there's no discomfort going forward. There it was, the same word. Present. The one Ethan had weaponized against me when my world was falling apart. I didn't respond. Not because Vanessa was wrong to reach out. Not because I wanted to punish her. But because I didn't need to say anything. Her message wasn't asking for absolution, it was closing a loop, and I respected that. I blocked the number after reading it. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The following weeks were quieter than I expected. The sale of my mom's house went through. I signed the paperwork without ceremony. I moved into a small condo downtown. Bright, simple, neutral. No ghosts in the corners. Therapy became routine, twice a week. We talked about grief, about responsibility, about how growing up too fast teaches you to carry things alone, and how that can make you attractive to people who want support but don't want to give it. At the next Tech Vista board meeting, everything was strictly business. Vanessa presented. I listened. Philip thanked the board. No tension, no subtext, just work. After the call, I realized something quietly profound. I didn't feel anything toward Ethan anymore. No anger, no sadness, no curiosity. Nothing. Silence hadn't been my response. It had been my answer. And for the first time, I knew with absolute certainty that I would never break it. 14 weeks after the breakup, I was sitting on the floor of my new place, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, when it hit me that my life finally felt quiet in a way that didn't hurt. The condo was small, clean lines, big windows, nothing fancy, but it was mine. No memories embedded in the walls, no echoes of hospital nights or whispered goodbyes. Just space, breathing room. I sold my mom's house the month before. That decision had been harder than I expected, not because I was attached to the structure, but because selling it felt like closing the final chapter of a life that had revolved around survival. She'd done everything she could in that house. Loved, sacrificed, endured. I didn't need to keep the place to honor her. I needed to live. Therapy had helped me understand that. Twice a week, I talked about grief, about growing up without a father, about learning early that being reliable meant being valuable, about how that lesson had followed me into adulthood and into my relationship with Ethan. You learn to be strong before you learn to be protected, my therapist said once. That can confuse people. Some will admire it, others will exploit it. That explained a lot. I took a sabbatical from school for the rest of the year. The principal understood immediately. I'd never asked for time before. When I finally did, no one questioned it. With some of the inheritance, I set up a scholarship fund in my mom's name. $50,000 a year for students going into education. The first awards ceremony was scheduled for the following month. When I signed the paperwork, I cried. Not out of sadness, out of pride. My mom would have loved that. Tech Vista settled into a steady rhythm. The expansion plans moved forward. The board meetings became routine. I transitioned into an advisory role exactly the way my uncle had intended. Oversight without obsession. Influence without ego. Philip ran the company well. He didn't need me hovering. Vanessa stayed professional, focused, efficient. We didn't speak outside meetings. We didn't need to. There was no tension left to resolve. She'd moved on. So had I. Jason asked me one night if I ever felt bad about not responding to Ethan. Do you regret not saying anything? He asked. I thought about it carefully before answering. No, I said. He wanted engagement, anger, forgiveness, something he could react to. I gave him nothing because I genuinely had nothing left to say. That was the truth. Silence wasn't something I chose to punish him. It was something I chose to protect myself. A week later, I booked a flight. New Zealand. My mom had always wanted to go. She used to talk about it when she was tired, like it was a place you imagined when real life felt too heavy. Mountains, water, quiet. I was leaving in 2 days. The night before my flight, I got one last message. Unknown number. I didn't hesitate this time. I opened it calmly. Emily, it's Ethan. I just want you to know I ended things with Vanessa. She wasn't present. She was always distracted. I thought you should know, so there's no awkwardness. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I smiled. Not because I felt vindicated, because I finally saw it clearly. He still didn't get it. I didn't respond. I blocked the number. The next morning, I watched the city disappear beneath the clouds as the plane lifted off. I thought about my mom, about the way she faced fear without making it anyone else's responsibility, about how she taught me, without ever saying it, that love doesn't leave when things get hard. Sometimes people walk away. Sometimes they reveal themselves. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them go without a word. Silence isn't revenge. It's peace. I'm writing this from a cafe overlooking the harbor, the kind of place my mom would have loved, but pretended was too touristy, while secretly enjoying every second of it. The water is impossibly blue. The air smells like salt and coffee. Boats drift lazily in the distance, like they have nowhere urgent to be. For the first time in a long time, neither do I. New Zealand was everything she imagined it would be. Mountains that didn't feel real. Silence that wasn't empty. I stood at the edge of places that made my problems feel appropriately small. I took photos I'll never post. I did things just because they scared me a little. Things she would have been terrified to try, and proud of me for doing anyway. On my last night there, I reread her note. Not because I was sad, because I was grateful. When I got back, life didn't rush at me the way it used to. It moved at a manageable pace. The scholarship awards went out as planned. 3 students. One of them was the daughter of a single mother who wrote about wanting to teach chemistry because her high school teacher believed in her when no one else did. I cried reading that essay. Jason sent me pictures from the ceremony. I saved them all. Tech Vista continued to grow. Expansion into 2 new markets was approved. I stayed in my advisory role, just close enough to protect what mattered without losing myself in it. Philip handled the rest. He was good at it. Better than good. Vanessa remained exactly where she belonged. Focused, upward, unbothered. We never spoke outside meetings. We didn't need to. There was nothing unresolved between us. That surprised me at first. Then it didn't. She hadn't been my antagonist. She'd just been the next chapter in someone else's pattern. About a week after I got back, Jason asked me something that made me pause. "Do you ever feel bad," he said, "about not responding to Ethan's apology? Like, do you think you owe him something?" I thought about it longer than I expected to. Then I shook my head. "No," I said. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted engagement, anger, conversation, something he could work with. Silence gave him nothing to manipulate. That was the truth. I didn't stay quiet to be cruel. I stayed quiet because I had already said everything that mattered with my actions. People ask about closure like it's something another person gives you, like it arrives in the form of a perfect apology or a moment of mutual understanding. That's not how it works. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. Ethan wanted an answer. He wanted reassurance that he hadn't been the villain in his own story. He wanted to rewrite the ending. I didn't give him that, because the ending had already been written the night he chose to walk away in a hospital hallway while my mother was dying behind us. He showed me who he was when staying required patience, empathy, and sacrifice. Everything after that was just confirmation. I heard through Jason, indirectly, vaguely, that Ethan moved to Seattle for a new job. Fresh start, new environment. Same habits, probably. I wish him well in the way you wish well to someone you no longer think about. Sometimes I reread the last message he sent before I blocked him for good, not because I'm tempted to respond, but because it reminds me of something important. He didn't regret leaving me. He regretted leaving the wrong person. He wasn't sorry he chose money and status over love. He was sorry the money and status didn't choose him back. That distinction matters. Someone messaged me recently and asked if silence was really the best response, if it ever felt like weakness. Here's what I told them. Silence isn't what you use when you don't have the words. Silence is what you choose when the words are no longer necessary. It's not punishment. It's peace. And sometimes it's the most honest answer you'll ever give. Anyway, the sun's starting to set, the water's turning gold. I'm going to sit here a little longer and not think about any of this. To everyone who listened, who stayed, who told me I wasn't wrong when I needed to hear it, thank you. Life's strange. Sometimes the worst moments strip everything away and leave you with clarity you didn't know you needed. Sometimes the people who leave do you the biggest favor. And sometimes the most powerful word in the world is the one you never say at all. If you've made it this far, Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know stories like this can be heavy. Loss, betrayal, regret, none of it is easy to sit with. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from all of this, it's this. You don't owe access to people who walked away when you needed them most. You don't owe explanations to people who already made their choice. And you don't owe closure to anyone who never protected your heart. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it isn't dramatic. Sometimes it looks like moving on quietly, building a life that no longer includes the people who couldn't stay. If you've ever been in a place where silence felt like the only thing you had left, know that it can also be strength. It can be boundaries. It can be peace. Thank you to everyone who listened, who shared similar stories, and who reminded me that I wasn't alone when it mattered. If this story resonated with you, feel free to leave a comment, share it with someone who might need it, and stay tuned for the next one. Until then, take care of yourself.